Intro. We all live somewhere in the world, one of the two Americas, Europe, Africa, Asia, or Australia, because nobody watches YouTube from Antarctica. It's something that geopolitical lines affect all of us, meaning we have this funny thing called passports and geography. We all know what a passport is, considering it's what most of us, excluding the United States, since they don't go anywhere, need. This passport lets you go to every country, or most of them depending on which one you have. Some of them are a lot better than others just due to how many different countries you can go to. For example, with an Afghani passport, you can't really go to too many countries since it is considered a weak passport. But with a Swiss or Singaporean passport, you can go to almost every country. Interesting fact, Afghanistan is the country that the least amount of countries can legally go to with a passport. And now we can get to the world geography. First up, we have the second richest continent in the world, North America. For the northern section, I'm only going to be talking about mainly Canada and Mexico. I'll get to you another day. Canada's pretty big, but it does have the same thing the United States has, where it's divided into these little parts. These are called provinces instead of states. This is due to the way that they are run, which is completely different from how each state in the United States runs. After some quick research, the states are not provinces in the United States due to the 10th Amendment. The United States and Canada do have one of the cleanest borders geopolitically. And yes, one of the cleanest because it's a straight line. And how could you not like that? That's due to the agreement the United States had with Canada as they expanded westward. They kept it at one of the parallels. It was also chosen for simplicity's sake. Another thing to mention is the Canadian license plates. Yes, they're very fun to see on trucks, but the Northern Territory's license plate is shaped like an epic bear. It's very unique, which is rare for license plates, but I wish we did that here. Moving down from the clean border, we get a less clean, but still nice looking geopolitical border. The lines for the border make sense for the United States and Mexico from a Google Earth perspective because it was what was claimed during the Mexican War. Fun fact about what we could have had after the Mexican War ended, we could have annexed all the way down to Mexico City, but one of the people in Polk's administration chose not to, which was kind of good on their part. It made the border we know, but since Texas had been annexed by the United States due to their independence, that was bound to stay. The other thing to say about Mexico is about Baja California, which literally means Lower California. This makes sense considering California, it is just right there, above it. Other than that, there isn't too much to say about the borders within Mexico. It's similar to the US and Canada, where it's smaller lines when it was in a larger line. And moving southward towards Central America, we get to Belize and Guatemala, the two countries that border Mexico. Sadly, Central American countries are often forgotten for one of the other random ones that Americans can think of. But the way to remember this is Belize is the smaller one bordering Mexico, Guatemala is the one that's larger. In terms of topography, a lot of Central American countries have the same type of biome, that being tropical forests. This is something mainly seen in this region as Mexico has a variety of biomes. Not as much as the United States, but still a lot. It has deserts, tropical forests, and some other nice ones as well. Moving past Belize and Guatemala, we have another set of twin countries, El Salvador and Honduras. El Salvador being the much smaller one compared to Honduras, but both still having access to the oceans. Like Belize and Guatemala, Honduras does not have access to the Caribbean Sea. None of these countries, other than Mexico and some of the islands, have access to the Gulf of Mexico. It really is interesting how there's just two separate oceans just nearby. I wonder if they have their own aquatic borders. Moving down, we lose all the twin countries for now. I hope a rebellion doesn't happen anywhere. We see Nicaragua as it takes up a hefty size in Central America. It's notable for its coffee beans, bananas, I think, and it's one little island. Shout out to anybody living in Cayo Mayo. Going further down the map, we see Costa Rica, which combined with Panama make the funky shape that is the bottom of North America. Costa Rica is the Central American country that's often confused for one of the islands. You'll never guess why. Panama is the country that separates North and South America and makes the seas one, kind of, the Panama Canal, one of the most used canals, and the one of the few to be funded by American dollars in U.S. history. It makes the Pacific Ocean and the Caribbean Sea connected by just existing. Really interesting stuff. Just don't forget that part where it is untravelable due to the crimes that make North and South America an unwalkable dream. Next up we have South America. Can you name all 13 countries on the South American map? Once you memorize these, they're not that hard. By the way, France is there for some reason, kind of. That reason being, you guessed it, colonies, the imperial way of the 18th and 19th century is still here, kind of. Other than French Guiana, the countries are easy to remember unless you're looking at a map of just their flags. Colombia, Venezuela, and Ecuador are the yellow, blue, and red gang. Uruguay and Argentina are blue and white. And Chile and Paraguay are the red, white, and blue flags. Don't get that confused as any other country. Other than that, there are a few things to note in terms of the landscape. This place is in the southern hemisphere, so whatever your funky weather system is, flip that because they're different. This is why 90% of people live up here. There's many forests and other tropical forests and all that such in South America. The biomes are as diverse as the ones in North America, if not a little less, just due to it being smaller in size. They also luckily have a big mountain range, like in North America, except theirs is called the Andes. Speaking of the aforementioned size, country borders, as you know, there's Brazil, and then there's everything else, since it basically gets swallowed by Brazil. There are two parts of South America, really. The countries that speak Spanish, and the countries that speak Portuguese. This is due to the history of the languages. This history being that they drew a line down the colonies Spain and Portugal had to declare which country got which side of the continent. Now we have the modern day borders with the same languages spoken, even if dialects have kind of evolved over time. Other than this, they are the closest continent to Antarctica, so going there won't be a problem if you live in Argentina, Chile, or any of the other Southern American countries. In the south, of course. Shout out to if you live on the Falkland Islands or South Georgia on the Sandwich Islands. There's many islands in the Caribbean Sea, like Jamaica, Cuba, which Americans can't go to, the Dominican Republic, Haiti, and a lot more. It seems like a fun vacation spot if you can fly there quickly. The Bahamas seem really cool, as you can tell from their light blue water on Google Maps. The Caribbean islands are more like an extension of North America as a part of it, but also the fact that Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory shows the influence other countries have there. It does seem more culturally based, though, in terms of how people live their life. Also, fun fact, the Puerto Rican island is the most eastern U.S. territory. This is why you always see them first on New Year's Eve. Greenland is also another interesting thing to bring up, as it's Greenland. This giant land mass in North America that's owned by Denmark. Barely anybody lives there, but they are near a place called Nuuk, which is kind of entertaining. It boasts the amazing fact that it is the least densest country in the world. It was an average of 0.14 people per square kilometer of land. Now it's time for every American's favorite vacation destination, Europe. Little do they know, there's actually an eastern side to it as well. Let's start off with the more known part first, which is the western half. You of course have your major cities like London, Paris, Madrid, Berlin, some more. Europe's a very dense continent, so I probably missed a few of them. Some things people don't know is how much more northern Europe is compared to us. Spain and Italy are on the same longitude, the vertical one, as New York City and Boston. Then we have the economic and prosperous countries, basically anything that isn't in the USSR past World War II. Notable landscape areas in Western Europe include the forests and the various desert-adjacent landscapes that cover parts of it. Like in places like Madrid, there are also the Swiss Alps in Switzerland that help draw interesting places in. If you've ever taken a train past the Obersee, you will know how pretty the Swiss Alps really are in the surrounding areas and how pretty they compare to. For Western Europe, it is hard to say specific landscapes as countries. They were not really like drawn by landscape. They're just more drawn by the sites, but also the big cities that those sites are usually in. These seem to be the most notable places since Europe is known for being very pretty. Going north, we have the Scandinavian countries. Here you can see a bunch of mountains like the Jostedalsbreen National Park in Norway. I probably butchered that, that's a long name. Here you can kind of see the same thing as the rest of Europe, where cities are mainly known instead of actual mountains and landscapes areas. The only exception may be Iceland, which is known for having volcanoes you can visit. It does, however, look like they are touring back and not really having as many tourists since it exploded. As for Eastern Europe, it's similar but different. Instead of countries, it seems to be broken down into areas. Like the Baltics, instead of like Serbia, Albania, the other ones, it is a smaller region put into one larger region. It's also more about culture in Eastern Europe and cities like Prague and Budapest and Moscow was a popular one before the incident. Kiev was also pretty because of its culture. Overall, out of Eastern Europe, I feel like the one place that has some landscapes people visit regularly is Greece. Athens is a city that many people visit, but then there's also the Parthenon and other places with history. It's a place built on its history and culture. Turkey changing its name to Turkey is one of the more interesting facts about the country. It had its capital changed from Constantinople to Istanbul. This is cool, and also the various mountains in the country. There's a song about the capital change if you need it. So here's the Middle East. We can just skip this one. Now we get to the origin point of where South America diverged from, Africa. It is the first and only continent to majorly be in the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. Sure, South America is in the northern hemisphere, but it doesn't have too much land in it like Africa does. Africa feels like the only continent where borders are the least relevant in terms of the landscape. This may be because of there being only 3 types of landscape, but it has a lot of nature in it. This can be seen if you've ever looked at Google Maps or anything of the sorts. On the map, you'll see 3 types of terrain: the Mediterranean terrain, the forest, and the middle terrain, and the southern, more savanna-like scenery. They each have their own unique qualities from the views. The northern end follows the same scenery you would see in Italy and Spain. These would be in countries like northern Algeria and Libya. Just the places that surround the Mediterranean Sea. It makes sense that this would be from it. The other scenery in the northern part is the Sahara Desert, the desert everyone wishes civilization could be built in. It's like the African version of Siberia, where basically no big towns can be formed there, no matter its size. Moving downwards towards the climate that forms around the equator, these climates feel much more like the equator considering that they are on the line, and I just said that it's on the equator. The only area that it's not like this is Somalia and some adjacent areas, which are more plains and mountains-like. Even in a satellite view, you can see the drastic difference. The second largest rainforest does sit in the DRC, which is the Democratic Republic of the Congo. This is the Congo Basin Forest, which is protected by the DRC, which would have to be based on them to do that, because nature preservation is good. The forest does cover a prominent amount of land of the country. I forgot how much, but it's in the hundreds of thousands square kilometers. Moving down, we get to the final part of Africa, and the part most people think about when they think about traveling to Africa, the savannah. It takes up major cities like Johannesburg and part of Cape Town. This has a lot of scenery like animals, and where a lot of safaris usually take place, especially in like movies. The interesting thing about Africa is also how people know 2 opposite sides of the continent. Those being Egypt was Cairo and the pyramids, and the southern side was Johannesburg in South Africa, like where those emerald mines were in the regime. Before moving on to Asia, there is something to mention in terms of the geography in South America and Africa. The longest river used to be debated between the Nile and the Amazon. This is because the origins of the rivers were unknown, so people had to rely on estimates and measurements and math. At the end of the day, the answer is the Nile River. People may disagree, but if anybody says this, just ask them to repeat 6th grade geography. It's called common sense, and if you speak it with somebody with dumb sense, they would say this. Now that we all know the correct answer, we can move on to Asia. Asia is the largest continent. Then you look at where everybody lives and where you can actually go. Your options really become limited. First off, Siberia? No. Gobi Desert? No. Middle East? No. North Korea? You know the answer to that one. Other than this, Asia has a very rich amount of biomes and a bunch of land to spare. There's deserts in the west that are very hot, and then there's Siberia, the cold wasteland from Fallout that it is. There's also deserts in the middle that are probably also hot. Asia might have the most amount of coastal cities out of any continent, just due to Japan and China alone. There's like so many major cities like Beijing, Tokyo, and Kyoto that are just on the coast, which makes sense. It allows for further trading since there's so much ocean just right there in the Pacific. I do think the country that got screwed over the most is Mongolia, the country that is known for its famous navy. It's in between Siberian Russia and China on both sides. No other neighbors. It's just kind of there. The other interesting area is the Vietnam-Thailand area next to India. The one mainly remembered by America by the war. This is because of the big jungles that are there, and the fact that people only remember Vietnam and Thailand when Cambodia and Laos are right there. This is one of the most interesting regions as it leads to the island parts of the continent. Indonesia has many islands, around 33,000, but the largest is Java. The country has so many islands that look fun to visit, like Pyodlo. There's a lot that somebody might not even know until they go on Street View or something to explore. It's like a fun game to see if you can find something prettier than the last when you randomly drop it. It is also near the Philippines, which is really like Indonesia in terms of islands. It's full of pretty islands and is full of this lush nature, it seems like. It feels like an island that should be explored more and more, but the only limitation is time and how much you have off of work. Then we have the Koreas, aka Count the Dystopia Simulator. By the way, it's 2. Up and down. On to Japan, with mountains in the north and cool forests and plains in the south. It has a lot of different types of terrains that it feels like it would be fun to explore. They also have one of the most efficient public transportation systems in the world, which helps people get to places. This seems to be common in Asia, where they can actually get places through public transportation. Quick fun fact, Japan is much lower than you thought. Tokyo is on a similar level to Middle California in terms of vertical distance. 3 major places to know about Oceania. 1. Australia, 2. New Zealand, and 3. Papua New Guinea. It's full of many islands, but each of them are so small it would take a lot of time to summarize them all here. Australia is the outback, and mainly also the coastal cities like Sydney, Brisbane, and Perth. These are all nowhere near each other, covering 3 different parts of the country. If you want to get from Brisbane to Perth by walking, 1, what is wrong with you? But 2, you would have to go through the outback. The outback is always described as something out of a Resident Evil game, the way the animals should act. Seems like a challenge for some daring, venomous, biting YouTuber to do. It also is full of pretty mountains, similar in what looks like a mesa at times, but not fully. Next up is New Zealand, a country dedicated to r/maps without New Zealand, and the place Lord of the Rings was filmed at. But you knew the second one. It has many mountains, and if you've seen the films, you already know enough about New Zealand's terrain. It's also split into 2 islands, which gives it awe. Papua New Guinea is next, and all you need to know about this island is that it seems like a mix of Indonesia and Australia, which makes sense, considering its borders connect to Indonesia and it's close to Australia with its islands. That's called math done quickly and critical thinking. The other islands like Tuvalu and the other smaller ones seem pretty, but are not prevalent enough to be mentioned, though Tuvalu does own the rights to any .tv website domains. It's a shame. It's the only interesting fact about those islands that's kind of commonly known. Now we have Antarctica. Two things you need to know. Concordia Station is right there, and right now it's negative 49 degrees Celsius. That is all. Outro. Geography is pretty fun. Please like and subscribe. Comment, I guess, as well, but just say your favorite country or whatever. Pretty please subscribe.